Tonight is a chance to learn more about how to secure testing accommodations, managing your numbers during exam day, and navigating the application process. We're so glad to have you all here with us. My name's Heather, and I'll be co-hosting the evening with Rab. As a heads up, we are going to be recording the session tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to share a land acknowledgement. I'm going to be sharing the land acknowledgement for Treaty 20 since that's where I'm zooming in from tonight. I respectfully acknowledge that I am on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Nations for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor these teachings. Before we begin the evening, Rav and I are going to introduce ourselves along with the panelists for this evening. Thank you all for being here. To give you a little bit of background about myself, I've been a program facilitator with DHF for the past 2 years, and I've had diabetes since I was 12 years old. So in October, I'll be coming up on my 10-year anniversary. I'm currently a student at Trent University, entering the Bachelor of Education program in the fall, and I just recently graduated from my Bachelor of Arts Honors in Indigenous Studies from there as well. At Trent, I actually worked in their medical professional stream a couple summers ago, compiling documents on requirements for getting into different schools with different medical specialties. So it'll be interesting to kind of revisit that and learn more about standardized medical testing from our guests.
Thank you, Heather. Hey, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Rav, and I'm one of the program facilitators with DHF. I've had diabetes since forever, and I'm super happy to just be here with everyone to chat about preparing for and writing your LSAT, MCAT, and PCAT. It's honestly something that I've never really thought of in terms of like having diabetes and what the process is like to navigate it. So looking forward to our chat tonight. So for folks attending, feel free to use the chat feature to introduce yourselves and ask questions. We will get to them by the end of the webinar. And with that being said, and us having a jam-packed hour, we'll get to our wonderful speakers' introductions. So first off, we have the lovely Anastasia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anastasia. Sorry, we're just introducing our background. Okay. So I did my Bachelor of Biochemistry at Ottawa U, and I did my Doctor of Pharmacy degree at the University of Toronto. I graduated in 2019. And since then, I've been practicing pharmacy in nursing homes. So I'm a consultant, and I consult nurses and doctors on prescribing practices for a much older population than people typically practice with. And since then, I received the diabetes educator certification as well. And I've had diabetes since I was 1 year old. So that's 32 years total.
Okay, hi everyone. My name's Hafsa, and my background is that I actually just graduated a Bachelor of Commerce from Queen's. I did a minor in religious studies, and right now I started my new grad program at Manulife. I'm in global wealth asset management. I did write the LSAT in January, but I decided not to apply to law school right now. And I've had diabetes for about 7 years now. I got diagnosed when I was 15.
Hi, I'm Zainab, and I've had diabetes since I was 2 years old, so I don't really know life without it. I just finished 3 years studying neuroscience at the University of Toronto, and I'm now starting medical school in the fall at the University of Toronto.
Thank you all for introducing yourself. The first question I have for our speakers is, what made you want to pursue a career in pharmacy, law, or medicine?
So I was debating between different career paths, pharmacy and law included, actually. And so like throughout high school, like I never really knew what I wanted to do. And I wanted a job that was like not repetitive, and I wanted something that like I knew would like I know this sounds like a cliche, but I wanted to do good in the world. But my biggest fear that was like preventing me from doing medicine was that it would take too long and it would be too hard. And like everyone that I talked to was like, "Oh, but you're gonna be 30 anyway, and like you're gonna be old eventually." So then I was like, okay, like that makes sense, like yes, it's gonna be hard, but it's also gonna be rewarding. And like 15 years down the line or 20 years down the line, I don't want to regret thinking, oh, I could have done something that I really loved. So with medicine, like once I kind of decided on medicine, I went into undergrad not really knowing what I wanted. I started off actually in forensic psychology and then I transferred to neuroscience just because I was debating between law and medicine. And then once I kind of decided on medicine, I realized there are so many opportunities within it that are rewarding for me and like personally, which was diabetes. And like what really drew me to medicine was I can work with kids with diabetes and I can do diabetes research and like it's rewarding for me personally and like I can give back to my community. So that's kind of what drew me to medicine.
That's awesome. I feel like I have a similar story because I really liked law as well. Like it's not the same like Zainab said like every day. Like in high school I honestly didn't know what to do. I applied for a bunch of random programs and I got into my program and I thought that business background would be good for law if I wanted to do it eventually. And then in my undergrad I just wanted to keep my options open. What initially drew me to law is that my mom had a pretty messy divorce with my dad, and she self-repped herself. And seeing her how she navigated the system, and then also she now graduated from law school, and my brother's in law school too. So there's a lot of lawyers in the family now, so is what kind of pushed me to take the LSAT as well. But I think it just like allows me to like have different options if I did want to eventually apply to law school. So that's why I took the LSAT.
Throughout all of my undergrad, I was heavily involved for all 4 years, and I had this grand career of pursuing science in my head. But then I realized that funding for science research was being cut year after year, and I basically wanted a career that could sustain me, could sustain a family. Science research was definitely not it at the time. I don't know what it's like right now. So then I was like, well, how can I apply my love for science to a stable career where I can also make an impact? Medicine was out because I don't like touching people and kind of performing procedures. That is totally not my thing. Pharmacy seemed like a perfect fit. And after practicing as a pharmacist for the past 6 years, I'm very happy with my choice. I get to make an impact on patient health. I get to change prescribing practices for nurse practitioners and doctors, and I can kind of use all the knowledge that I have to its fullest extent. So definitely no regrets there.
Thank you for sharing like your honesty with like your experiences because I was always someone who like in high school was very like I want to do everything and I also want to do nothing and like that seemed very scary to come out and say. So I'm glad that I wasn't the only one in that boat. But jumping back to our questions, for the specific tests that you wrote, were there any specific accommodations you requested and why did you request those accommodations?
I first applied for accommodations. I was planning to take the November LSAT last year and started applying for accommodations in August. I applied for accommodations because in university I had accommodations, so I never knew what testing was like without them, and I just wanted that safety net in case I did need extra time. So it was a pretty easy process because once you're applying to a law school, you sign up for the LSAC account, which is the Law School Admission Council, and then on the website you can just easily go to request accommodations, and then there's this form. You could ask for time and a half or double time. I asked for double time, and then my doctor just had to put a note and sign off, and he did it pretty quickly. And then I got the approval sometime end of September. So the whole process was kind of easy on me. I don't know how it is with other people because I haven't talked to other people about it, but yeah, that was my experience with that.
So I think I might answer a little bit of this in the next question, but I was kind of debating whether or not to request accommodations just because like I've lived with it almost my whole life and I didn't have accommodations in undergrad. I didn't have like I never had accommodations before. And it was actually the Diabetes Hope Foundation that kind of like empowered me to like speak up for myself and be like, you know what, like I probably should take like not take advantage of it, but like take what I deserve, right? Like if I have a low blood sugar, what am I going to do? So I looked it up on the AAMC website, and they said anyone's allowed to take. So this is like blanket for everyone. You don't have to request accommodations for an insulin pump. You don't like have to really worry about that when you take it in. But you're not allowed water in the test room. And then if you have like I don't have this, but if you have a CGM connected device, you're not allowed to take that in. Or if it's connected to your phone, you're not allowed to take that in. And so I requested additional things like other than that. So I requested diabetes supplies without cell phone. So I just wanted to be sure that my pump would be allowed. This was just me being cautious. So I requested diabetes supplies without cell phone, extended section breaks. So this is in between the 4 sections of the MCAT. There's a 15-minute break, a 30-minute break, and then a 15-minute break. And so I requested extended time for that because like to bolus, or if I was high and I needed to use the washroom, or like just, just time for me to take care of everything. And then I also requested stop the clock breaks, which means that during the actual testing like section, if I were to go low or if my pump was to alarm, then I could just stop the clock on my actual test and like take a step back and say, okay, like I need to treat this or whatever it is. And then I'll get into whether these were approved or not in a bit. So you have to request accommodations at least 60 days before your test day. And so I was nervous to approach my endocrinologist because in the past, when I requested accommodations for university, so it was all around the same time, I was requesting accommodations for university, and she was pretty confident in my abilities to work without accommodations. So I didn't feel comfortable going to her for the MCAT, and so I went to my family doctor. But family doctors are notoriously overworked, and so it took me about 3.5 weeks to actually get the letter and all the forms signed. And like my family doctor doesn't know me that well either, so it was a very long process. And so I ended up, even though I, met with my doctor well in advance, I only was able to submit my request 56 days in advance, and they require 60. And so I didn't actually receive my accommodations in time. And then I think it was like 4 days after my test day or 3 days after my test day, it was approved, but by then it was too late. But just for reference, what was approved was stop the clock breaks. I would have received 60 minutes of flexible break time per test day. So if I went low more than once, I had like a 60-minute period where I could pause and then treat my low or whatever. Extended breaks. So to each section, I had 10 minutes added. And then diabetic supplies in testing room. So I got a separate testing room as well.
It's very interesting to hear, and honestly, fantastic that like you managed to kind of take charge of yourself and apply for those accommodations, because similar to yourself, I've had diabetes my entire life, and I went through my whole life basically thinking of myself as perfectly normal. Like, this is life. I don't deserve extra accommodations because I'm just like everybody else. And I don't know if it's the way I was raised or just my own mentality. I never stopped to think that I needed accommodations. And to be honest, there have been points in my life where I really did need them. Throughout like all these years in school, all the tests, like I have been low and I have been high during those tests, and I definitely could have benefited from accommodation for sure. So when it came time to write my admission test, it did not even cross my mind. I checked on the test website that pump was allowed, and I believe snacks were allowed as well in a clear plastic bag, as long as there were no labels on them. So I took glucose tablets and that's it. And I was like, what else could I possibly need? So thankfully the test went perfectly fine. There were no issues. But I think every time I had to be in a testing environment, I was always nervous. What if something goes wrong and I don't perform as well as I should? And I kept thinking to myself, of course you're going to perform. You have all along. But I think kind of if I had known that this is something I should have done, I definitely would have done it. And looking back to all of the testing environments I've been in, including being licensed to actually become a pharmacist, that was a very grueling and extensive process, just like it is for any other licensed profession. I didn't request accommodations there either. And it definitely would have brought peace of mind to have that as a backup. I've needed it. Thankfully, everything worked. Never had to retake any licensing exam, thankfully. But kind of knowing that it was a possibility at the time, I definitely would have taken advantage of it. I kind of never considered it because I didn't.
Interesting. Thank you all for sharing your perspectives. That was really interesting to hear about. I think it's so funny too how like sometimes we don't request accommodations because we're used to it, but I found it really interesting, Zainab, hearing about the stop the clock accommodations. Like, is that the actual name for it that they put down, accommodations? I'm just curious.
Yes, like the
Oh, okay.
official like name for each of the accommodations that I mentioned, that's what they call it. Extended section
Okay.
breaks, stop the clock breaks.
Okay, yeah. That was just really interesting. I haven't heard of that one before, so that's yeah, cool. Okay, so for our next question, we're gonna ask, do you have any advice for someone with type 1 diabetes who's about to start applying for accommodations? What are these steps?
I would say that the number one thing I would say is that to give yourself more time than a non-diabetic, which sucks, but for studying for the LSAT, you have to like when you're taking like practice tests or anything to make sure that your blood sugars are in range, you don't go low or you're not high too. It really like um you need a schedule for that. Like it took me a while to find a process for that because I remember I would eat before doing a practice test because I didn't want to be hungry doing it. But then later I would dip down and then I would go low and have to stop in between. And I wanted to test under normal conditions to make sure that if I needed this a safety net, then I would have it. But I wanted to like see how I would do well under like perfect conditions. So, like I did give myself 4 months initially to study, but then I ended up even pushing my November LSAT to January because I felt like I needed more time. So it's really just giving yourself grace. You are diabetic, you deserve to have like time, and you are like different in that way under testing condition. Because for me personally, I do get test stress and my like blood sugars are higher. So yeah, I would just say give yourself more time. And also, this isn't even diabetes related, but just a side note is that when you're applying, you do need letters of reference. So make sure that, you know, you're close to some of your professors and give them enough time. Because when I was going to apply for the cycle, I think I emailed my professors like 2 weeks in advance, which isn't like good. So just a side note there.
I really like what Hafsa said about like you deserve it because like I think that was a really big hurdle for me thinking that I don't deserve it because like I function fine and I've had it my whole life, so it's totally fine. So like I think you deserve to have accommodations. You deserve to test in conditions that are best for you, and don't be afraid of asking for too much. Like that's what the like committee is for. They're gonna review your application and they're gonna say, okay, like you know, this is a bit too much, or this is like whatever, right? Like so, don't be afraid to ask for too much. It's better to ask for too much than too little. And then yeah, use what you can get with your diabetes. Um, and talk about diabetes in your applications and in your interviews. Like when I did my interviews, I mentioned diabetes. I want to say I had 4 stations, and I want to say I mentioned it in 2 or 3 because it really personalizes you. Like it's my whole life. Like it really is like it's a 24/7 job and we deal with it all the time. And so mention it in your applications. Like if you're given a scenario in your application, like, oh, well, you know, if you're applying to med and you're given a scenario, then you could say, yeah, like from personal experience, I know what it's like to have to deal with medications or whatever it is. I think that that's something that can make you actually stand out because like we deal with this all the time. Like this is like all the time for us. So I think definitely mention it in your applications. And then maybe even For me personally, I loved getting involved with like diabetes extracurriculars and stuff. That's kind of what, once I decided on med and once I started getting involved with diabetes extracurriculars, that's when I decided actually I want to do endocrinology and I want to work with kids. So just explore your interests and like maybe start with diabetes.
I would say have a plan of how to have the most perfect test day or the most perfect interview day and try to replicate those conditions over and over. So that was my personal strategy. And what I realized is that sometimes things just do not go right. Everybody with type 1 diabetes knows this. If you have a pump, sometimes you get an occlusion and your infusion site is just not working that day. Maybe your CGM is completely off base and giving you really weird readings. So how do you prep? Or at least in my case, I have like a full replacement kit for every component of my pump, like my cartridge, infusion site tubing, CGM, extra insulin. I have like a whole kit ready to go. Even if they don't allow it into the test center, I still have it with me and maybe give it to the proctor. So also, if things don't go right and say you drop low in the middle of the test, kind of just breathe and take it minute by minute. It's happened to me before. You come out of it on the other side one way or another, but don't let it freak you out too much. Just be as prepared as possible, I would say. And as everyone else has said, you do deserve the accommodations. Because as much as you want to have an absolutely flawless day or a flawless blood sugar life, that's very unlikely to happen. Like things do go wrong, and recognizing that is important. And you deserve accommodations just like anybody else with a condition that hinders their performance occasionally.
Thank you for that. I wish I had taken advantage of accommodations when I was in my undergrad, only because I was so used to like functioning while my blood sugar was like high or higher. But like looking back at it now, like I was such like a ditz for doing that because I do the stupidest things when my blood sugar is high. Like my goal is to finish the test, not to do it well, you know? So it's always good to kind of have that insight. Now, speaking of unexpected issues, did you experience any preparing for your test or during the test itself, even with the accommodations in place? And how did you navigate that?
I didn't experience any unexpected issues. I made sure that I ate my meal but like 2 hours in advance because that was what was working for me when I was practice testing. And then after each section, I did get a 10-minute break and I was allowed to go on my phone. So I would be checking my blood sugar and I had food when I was testing. I was testing from home. So that made it easier as well. So luckily, I didn't run into any issues on the test day.
I also didn't really run into any issues on test day. I do remember like walking in at 8 a.m. and I was like shaking from head to toe from how nervous I was. I packed a big lunch. I didn't eat it though, like I barely ate, but I did in advance because I didn't receive accommodations. I remember like thinking my strategy was to kind of under bolus for what I ate. So I think I ended up having half of a sandwich and then I only bolused for a quarter because I was so afraid of going low. And so that was like really the most unexpected thing. And then I know this is recorded, so I don't think the chat is recorded too. I also said in the chat that don't do practice tests when you're high because that is actually the most soul crushing thing. Because like you think everything's fine, like you're just drinking water while you're taking it, but it's actually not fine. And then when you get the score back, you're like, oh wait, what's going on? So definitely like Hafsa said, replicate, and Anastasia, like they said, replicate test conditions. And it's okay if it's not perfect, just don't be high or low when you're practicing.
On my end, thankfully, everything was fine. It was very smooth. I was pleasantly surprised with how smooth and easy, unproblematic it went. Having said that, though, nowadays the testing requirements for pharmacy school have actually changed. that before we used to have the PCAT, which is like the pharmacy admission test, similar to the MCAT. Nowadays, though, they only have the Casper, and it's online. So it's from the comfort of your own home. Whereas the PCAT before, it used to be at a testing facility. So having it online in the comfort of your own home, it definitely makes things easier. Having said that, though, one thing to keep in mind is that the camera and the microphone are always on. So even though like you may not be actively being recording a response to the like Casper questions, the camera is still watching. So in the accommodations, just make sure to request like your phone or your, like, I don't know, your CGM reader or whatever it is you use. Make sure to list all the devices in the accommodations, because the conditions now are a little different.
Thanks, everyone. So interesting to hear about. I definitely agree with not taking practice tests low or high too. I was just taking one last night for the Bachelor of Education. They put in this new math proficiency test, and I did the practice one on the EQAO site. And I went low halfway, and I was like, yeah, I cannot think about linear relations or x, y plus b, any of that. Well, I'm having a low blood sugar. Okay, our next question is, how has navigating accommodations shaped how you advocate for yourself more broadly? So feel free to answer however it applies, through work, interpersonal relationships, or for other academic pursuits.
I can talk about this question for hours because when I was diagnosed, I was a bit older, so I was 15, and I didn't want anyone to know or tell any, like, I remember only telling like two of my closest friends, and only my family knew. I didn't wear a Dexcom or a pump or anything because I was just so ashamed. But once I went to Queens and started my undergrad, I chose to like tell everyone, and I met people with diabetes. That was like the first time. And even like making sure that I have accommodations in my undergrad as well, taking that first step really just made me feel more comfortable, because I know all of us could test under normal conditions if we really wanted to, but it's just being comfortable to take that step and say like, okay, yeah, maybe I do need to check my blood sugar from here and there and treat a low. So it just makes you feel more comfortable in your skin, I feel like, even with navigating personal relationships and things like that. Like, hey, like, I might go low when we're watching the movie. Can you bring snacks for me? Or things like that. Or like having friends that bring low snacks for you just really makes a difference. I know like one of my friends always has chocolate in my in his car to make sure that I'm okay. So things like that really just makes you feel more comfortable in your skin and proud to have diabetes at the end of the day, I feel like.
I 100% relate to that because despite having it my whole life, I went through a period where I transferred schools and didn't tell anyone. And I think that's partially like what contributed to me like not wanting to request accommodations, because I was like, no, 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 I'm completely normal and like I don't need this. And so I think that's kind of what also, made me not so accepting of myself. So taking that leap with the MCAT and requesting accommodations, even though I didn't receive it, I think that has helped me like on a practical scale. I know for med school, I actually just submitted the application for accommodations for med school because it's okay to be different. And yes, life will sometimes be harder, and it's okay to admit that. It's okay to admit that, we're working 24/7, even when we're sleeping. We'll be waking up in the night because our pump is alarming, and it's okay because we are different, and it's okay to admit that. And I think that on a personal side of things, that's kind of what requesting accommodations has helped me realize. And also like be more open with my friends on like, yes, sometimes I will have to take a break and sometimes I'll have to sit and like, please get me a juice box, like stuff like that. Like it's being more accepting of yourself.
I 100% agree with what everyone else has said. And like, as I said before, I always kind of dealt with it pretending, my diabetes was totally not affecting my performance. Look at me, I am a perfect diabetic. I function just like anybody else without this condition. That's actually not true. Just like anybody else. I sometimes have very bad blood sugar days. Like sometimes my pump just does not work during the night. Maybe there's a kink in my infusion set or something. And then the entire day is just wasted. Like my productivity shot. I get the brain fog if I get a low. Like I just realize I don't function. And I think it really became real once I actually got licensed with my profession. And I realized that I have to take care of patients. So sometimes I have to make clinical decisions. And if I'm not on top of my game and if I'm not functioning, that has very real repercussions, not only on my own license and my livelihood, but like actual people that are under my care. So before, like my previous jobs, when I was in school, I never used to take sick days if my blood sugars were giving me trouble. But now I take full advantage of that. I even tell my manager, okay, my diabetes is really running me down. I don't think I can function. I'm going to take a sick day. And I'm lucky that with my job, I do get like more than enough sick days to accommodate for that. And I'm very open with my job when my condition impacts my performance. And I kind of take accountability for that. And I have had to do that ever since I started working in this capacity. So I think just acknowledging that, it impacts you, it really does. And you kind of deserve to take a break, take care of your health, and that's how you prevent burnout. That's how you keep going, is really important. Because we're all going to be working until we're 60? That's a long, long time to just keep showing up to work, keep being productive. And you kind of have to take care of yourself to prevent burnout and to prevent you from, completely falling apart. So, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. So now is the time we're going to open the floor to any questions from our other attendees. You can write your questions in the chat or take your audio off and ask away. I'll kick things off. So how long were your respective tests? Like, what did your test day look like?
My start day, I believe, was at 8 a.m. and it finished at, I want to say, 3:30. So I think I literally can't do math to save my life. Is that 7.5 hours?
Is that including the breaks?
Yes, that includes breaks.
Okay. Yeah, sounds about right to me.
Yeah, I think mine was similar to you, Zainab. I started at like 3 and ended at 11 or 10. I forget, but it was double the time because each section was 35 minutes originally, and then it was 70 minutes with my accommodations, and then a 10-minute break between the sections, and there was 4 sections. So yeah, like around like 7-8 hours.
Last time for me, I think it was around like 4.5 hours. But again, the testing conditions have changed. Instead of the PCAT, as I said before, we have now the Casper. And I think the maximum it can take is 110 minutes from the comfort of your own home. So it's definitely become a little easier.
Okay, good to know. And I have one question for Anastasia. So with the like CDE certification, like, do you know if they allow for accommodations? Like, what does that look like?
For the CDE, they do allow snacks. They do allow the pump. They do not allow, as far as I know, the phone. So for the CDE, I actually did ask for accommodations. I emailed them ahead of time. And the way that it works is that you have two cameras watching you. One you set up behind you. So I set up my iPad watching like the entire room on my back. You do it from home. And then you have a webcam in front of you. So anytime I needed to check my sugar or like pull out my pump because my CGM readings are on the pump, I would turn to the guy watching me from the back and be like, hey, I'm checking my sugar, I'm not cheating. And he'd give me the okay. So every time I would have to like speak into the air and the proctor that's watching me, um, they would know. And I have just like a bunch of glucose tablets in a little bowl on the side and some water. And that was all pre-approved by the organization that was running the test.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. I've never, even though I did my undergrad during COVID, or like I finished during COVID, I never really thought about like the whole online testing aspect of like having someone like watch me and like, if I did need to look at my pump, what would that look like? So having that insight is incredibly valuable. I'm just reading over Luca's question. Has anyone previously had issues during exams with hyperglycemia? If so, how did it impact you and how do you deal with it? I don't know if anyone else wants to add to this.
I don't know if I was just under bolusing because in the first thing in the morning I had a chocolate milk, I bolused half for that, and then at lunch I bolused half because I was just so afraid of going low because I can't function when I'm low as opposed to being high. But I don't honestly I feel like I've repressed the MCAT day from my memory, but I might have been like 12 to 14. But I couldn't tell you if I was actually 12 to 14. Like that's just what I feel like I probably was.
Yeah, mine is similar as well. Like I bolus less when there's a test. I was running like 10 steady and I was good with that because usually like I'm okay testing under those conditions. I'm really scared of going low. But if you do run higher, like between your breaks, you can risk it and like try to take a quick insulin shot to like make sure you go a bit down. But I don't know. I get scared doing those things. So I feel like running a bit higher, like 9 or 10 is pretty safe.
Yeah, I think the consequences of a low are much higher immediately, so it makes sense to be hesitant. But I know last summer I had taken the MCAT and it it was so my pump. I don't know if my pump was just not responsive, but I remember bringing the pen as backup, and I ended up actually running out of insulin by the fourth exam. I ended up using more insulin than I use in a typical day trying to correct, and I was stuck at like 14, 15, and going to the bathroom over and over again. So it was honestly like really unfortunate to have to deal with that and to like run out of the room halfway through the last part to kind of take my pump off because it wouldn't stop beeping. So it was kind of like, well, that's something that needs to be dealt with, whether it's more time or just trying something different. I know, like, I just actually got I'm on a tandem. I just got the steel insertion sites to test out because I've heard they have better perfusion for people using those. And I found the first 3 days I used it, I had no issues with like spikes and highs after certain meals that might typically lead to highs. So I don't know. I'm just trying to explore strategies and maybe hear if others have had similar experiences. But yeah, I know it's pretty crazy.
Sounds really stressful. One thing that I've sometimes done before like any test is replace my infusion set a couple hours before I go in. So it's enough time to see if that's a good infusion spot. Maybe like, I don't know, 4 hours or whatever, you'll be able to tell by then if it's not a good spot. So everything is fresh. And basically, as I said before, like have a kit with you with everything that you can replace from scratch as well. Another thing that I've done, because I'm personally very concerned about lows during testing. I'm completely non-functional. I can't reason. And the brain fog and the effect lasts for a while for me after that as well. Um, on the tandem pump, I set myself to exercise mode, which artificially bumps me up a little higher and stays that way for a couple hours.
Do you run high when doing your mock tests, like the full 7 hours?
Yeah, I tend to run high usually in any test environment. I think it's just the stress and probably need to have like an increased basal for those hours since things as simple as having a coffee without any like added sugar will contribute to higher blood sugar just because of that I don't know, I want to see the effect of like stress hormones or like cortisol. So um, yeah, but I think that's a good point, Anastasia, to have a fresh sight going into any exam just to be sure it won't cause issues from that end of things.
Because just two things. I think number one, Anastasia is what like made me think of this. Like the exercise mode, which would bump you up, but I know you want to go down. So like maybe doing like multiple like tests of like doing increased basal and seeing if that keeps you down, and then having multiple practice days to see if that like takes you too low or like if you need more. And the second thing was, have you requested like on the day where you had the pump alarming and like, which number one is so stressful. Like if that happened to me, I think I'd be in tears. But did you have accommodations that day?
No, I didn't. I've never used accommodations, so I wanted to join today and kind of explore that more. But yeah, I actually just registered to write an exam, so I'll definitely be putting in a request
When's your
for
test
these.
day? Is it 60 days out?
It's September 12th, so I have very little time to submit it.
Yeah. Do that ASAP.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not a medical professional. If anything, I just go based off the vibes in terms of my diabetes management. But as someone who has always just run high in periods of stress, I like, for a reference, like I was going through 150 units of insulin like every day and a half. And so with my medical team, they're like, whoa, that you're like using as much as a pregnant woman. And I'm like, sick. I'm not a pregnant lady. So I ended up having to switch to U200 insulin. So it's like double the concentration, but like half the amount of units. That is something that helped me. So for those insulin resistant folks, that's something to maybe consider or talk to your medical team about. Um, yeah, because now it's just great. I use less units, and I'm also someone when I change my like my site, my pump site, my blood sugar spikes right away unless I give myself insulin like right then and there. So just a medical marvel, I guess. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I was just reading a comment, Luca, and I was reading the second part of it about having high blood sugar uniquely impacting abstract reasoning. So I found it really interesting, but one of the accommodations I had in university that I didn't have in high school was only taking afternoon exams, but I guess with like the schedules of when they offer MCATs and things like that, that probably wouldn't be a possibility. Just because I usually find like in high school, I used to run high before I would take tests, but I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm way more sensitive to high blood sugars and I get like extreme fatigue if I go high at all. Um, so like having an afternoon was test was super helpful so that I could just kind of wait to see that steady line in the gray zone there and then continue with that. But I was wondering, would that be an option or is the timing super strict for like MCATs and things like that?
I mean, you could always request it. I know that because of double time, like they have like the testing center has to be open like late. So I feel like if that's something that would work for you, request it and then they'll have to accommodate you somehow. Or hopefully they'll accommodate you.
Yeah, yeah. I like the idea of stop time to manage things. I think that's really good. And yeah, I don't know about the afternoon. I honestly don't know if I would find a big difference. The what usually triggers me is eating like very like eating like anything in the morning will usually trigger going high. So I think best would be to maybe it doesn't sound great, but going into an exam fasted and then having snacks during the breaks might be a better approach than having like a dedicated breakfast before the exam. But I think it's probably worth checking into the afternoon. I just don't want to be like writing into like 7, 8 p.m. at night. It sounds brutal. But yeah, thanks.
All right, I'm not one of the panelists, but nor am I taking any long exam anytime soon. Maybe the MCAT in the future. But I did want to comment on the highs because I've had like 3-hour lab exams in my university, and by the end of them, I was always running at like 20, 21 and high, just because of the stress. It like slowly rises over time, and I'm too like scared to turn on a temp basal. So what works for me is not going in fasted, but going in with like only high protein breakfasts. So like Greek yogurt and eggs. And then because I do have accommodations in university, all of my professors know that I do. And halfway through, they allow me to step outside and check my sugars and like maybe have like a cheese or like salami or something that keeps me low. And then also being able to like bolus if it is 15, just to bring it down because it does take 4 hours to come down. So I find it's like you're like not letting it get too high, but also kind of managing as you go.
Yeah, definitely. That's nice to get ahead of time as well, because I feel like, especially if you're having like high numbers like 20, waiting 4 hours for it to come down can literally feel like a lifetime. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. We just wanted to say a big thank you to our lovely speakers for sharing all your stories and tips. It's really cool to hear from all the different perspectives and kind of things that you all experienced. Thank you, attendees, for spending the last hour with us and sharing your experiences and asking questions.
And for upcoming information about events and programming, please be sure again to check out our Instagram for all that hot gossip. Just want to say thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great evening.